All right, so let's provide more examples of the model folder and the C sharp classes. So so you'll get familiarity. So let's add a new item. So instead of adding a new item, let's add a class because we are well aware that we're adding a class. So it's pretty much the same on the navigation. So let's put the name of the class. So now initially we had a person object, which is a base class, and we had the employee, and the employee is inheriting all the person characteristics. And now let's create a student. So after creating a student, the student is also going to be inheriting the person class or the person object. So let's create a property. Okay, so let's yes, it's type int, so let's say student ID. Okay, so for simplicity, let us just add student ID. You could add more, like student picture, etc. So depending on the requirement of the client or the application that you're creating, and you could add more properties pertaining to student. Okay, so all right, so let's save this and let's go back to program, and now let's create a student instance. So initially we created an employee, and now let's create a student. Okay, so student, okay, so equals to a new student. So always remember the naming conventions of variable. Okay, so student, so I created student name variable, so for readability purposes, because we are creating a student. Okay, so it's singular for now, but if it's going to be students, multiple students, we will be, or you will be creating a collection of students, so you will use a different object. So that's on a probably one of the courses, I mean one of the parts that we are creating after this. So let's have a student, the student ID. Okay, so 1 2 3 4 5. All right, so let's have a student, the student name. Oops, it's wrong one. So student's first name, okay, is equals to let's say Bob. Okay, right. So let's have student, the last name. Okay, Cassidy. Right. So let's so that's how intelligent Visual Studio is. So once it creates a quotation, it's basically does a double quotation already. So it's anticipating your moves. Okay, so now he put it in a picture that we have an employee or a potential employee adding his credentials, adding him as an employee, and now we have a student adding himself or submitting a form for a student. But in real life scenario, since this is a C sharp course, it's fictitious that an employee and a student will come into a single printing. It can, but probably let's say there's a manager printing, or a head of a department who would like to see all the data, or all the population of students and employee. Okay, so it can be a separate form, an employee filling out, but on this demo where um, we have two personas, a student employee, and printing it into a single point of view, and that is not normally the case, but on this one we're building your C sharp, and I will have a separate course on that one, different personas. Okay, so as we build your skills, we add more technicalities or skill set. So, okay, as you grow, right? So now, right, so you can see that console object, console class, it falls out of the system. Okay, so um, what we're trying to do here is reuse the capability of the system of printing the student. So initially we print the employee credentials. So let's add more sense here. So let's say what we would like to write down using the console object and the write line method. Okay, so print, let's say print employee information. Okay, so let's say printing employee information for readability. Okay, so but prior to printing employee information, of course, we'll have the console.read line. Do a pause to do a pause prior to printing. Why? Because every action in the application world or the IT world is an event. Okay, so you are creating an event, and since you are not talking to a machine, okay, so you will inform the person the action that you would like to take off. Okay, so press enter to print employee information. Okay, so now to be able to do that, so you had console.read line. Okay, so if it's an empty space, the C# runtime library does not recognize the space, so it's nothing, it does nothing. Okay, so if you add multiple spaces, it does not affect, or there's no behavior. But this is something that you don't like to do because it will cover space, okay, in memory space. Okay, so you don't want to do that. Okay, so as much as possible you make it as close together. Okay, so console.read line, you have console.write line, printing employee information. Okay, so now after that you print the employee information. Okay, so let's do that again. So let's copy paste. Okay, press enter to print student information. Okay, so the console.read line behavior is you will need to press enter to be able to proceed to the next line. Okay, so printing student information. So the first one you asked to press enter, and now it's saying the action that it's already happening. And depending on your design, you could probably say here another console.write line. Okay, so you will say probably employee information printed successfully. Yeah, it's really up to you. Right, okay, so now let's copy this. Okay, so I'm being lazy again. Right, copy employee number, so that will not be student number, that will be student number, so that this will be student. Okay, that since the employee ID does not exist in the student class, so it will have an error. So let's have the student ID. Okay, so let's add more context here onto the .to string. Okay, so if you press dot, okay, so what you'll see, there are different methods inside. Okay, so right, let's go to the to string. So what it's saying is you are the integer object. Okay, since you created type int on the property student ID. Okay, and it tells a description of the function that you're using, and it returns a type. Okay, so it returns a type string. Okay, so once we deep dive into methods and functions, you will have a picture of what I'm talking about here. Okay, so you have all these capabilities because you are inheriting from the system object. All the functionalities in C sharp, the parent is the system object. Okay, so if you would like to learn more about the system object, so let's go there and navigate to the system object. Okay, so right, so you will see the system namespace, and we spoke about namespaces and the using statement. Okay, and these are the different classes, and as you deep dive, you'll find what you have in your bucket or your library, and you will have all these abilities, okay, of on your C sharp. So even it has already math object already for your own use, and you don't need to create one. Okay, and what we're trying to do here is I would like you to understand how the C sharp world works, so you can reuse it, use it, and create your own once you fully understand. And C sharp is only about type, class, or an object. If it's a wrong type, it's not going to work. So you're creating a type basically, and in our example, you created a type person, okay, type student, type employee. Okay, so it's exactly the same, and you build your own behavior. Okay, so you will know what I mean. If it's something that does not make sense yet, you will know what I mean as we go along. All right, so I think this is complete. Let's continue to the next recording.